Αγαπητοί φίλοι και φίλες, καλησπέρα. Καλώς ορίσατε στο φακό του Hellenic TV. Σήμερα φιλοξενούμε τον Chris Neophytou, ο οποίος είναι φωτογράφος, εκπαιδευτικός και εκδότης. Θα μιλήσουμε για την έμπνευση πίσω από τη δουλειά του, αλλά και για τη συμμετοχή των έργων του στην έκθεση There is an Island, την οποία μπορείτε να δείτε στην Κυπριακή Ύπατη Αρμοστεία στο Λονδίνο. Hello Chris, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And it's really nice to have you today. And well done about your achievements.
Thank you, thank you.
Now, Chris, growing up as a second generation Greek Cypriot in England, how did your culture background influence your perspective on photography and themes of plays?
Yeah, this is a very good question and probably always the best place to start. I think for anybody who grows up between two places, between two cultures, I think your sense of what a place is very heightened. And I think growing up in a very Cypriot community here in Birmingham and, being very connected to Cyprus, visiting Cyprus every year as long as I can remember since we were, only months old. I've always had this very strong connection with Cyprus, but obviously I grew up here. So when I go to Cyprus, I still feel like it's my home, but not 100% my home. And then when I'm here in England, I'm not really English, so England isn't my home either. So I'm almost in this third place. Even though deep down I think Cyprus is the closest. This gap between two places is what made me think a lot more about the small things, the differences. I think sometimes for us in the diaspora, we notice some of the things in Cyprus that we might not have noticed if we didn't have the distance. When you're inside something, it's harder to see it, but when you step back sometimes because you have to, you're forced to notice the things that are unique about a place and interesting, and I guess the things that, touch you as well.
This is a very nice explanation, and I fully understand how you feel. You feel home when you're in Cyprus and this nice excitement, feeling of belonging. But of course, yes, home is back in UK, so it's understandable. Now, can you describe any particular experiences from your childhood that you can say have significantly shaped your documentary approach to photography?
From my childhood, I think the biggest thing is just being in Cyprus all the time. I think it's I think just the things I just said, but also I was really like my family. I have two siblings, and my mother was a very creative person. She encouraged us all to be creative. We all used to draw and paint and things like that. And when I was young, I wanted to draw a lot. I painted, I drew. I was, quite good for my age and things like that. But there was something about the everyday things that I wanted to record. And I remember noticing things like sometimes a bit of architecture, sometimes a scene in the road or the street. And I wanted to draw it, but I didn't want it to be close to the thing. I wanted it to be the same. I wanted to capture that thing as I saw it, So in a way, like photography, those early kind of thoughts and memories drew me to photography because I wanted to capture things, I wanted to keep them. And I wanted to have them as I saw them, almost like a little collection of things that I noticed. And I think that was probably happened very early on when I was quite young.
Yes.
The camera was probably, I was still at school.
So what inspired you to found Out of Places books? I think back in 2016.
That's correct.
And how do you select the projects or the photographers that you are collaborating with?
Yes, this is a really important one for me as well. So I've always made photographic work from an art perspective. I've always done documentary photography in a slightly more artistic way. Ever since, I studied at university and college, I continued to make work for a long time. But when I finished with my studies, I found myself doing a lot of commercial work, and my heart was always somewhere else. So in 2016, I said, right, I'm just going to make a small publication. I've always loved photo books. I mean, you can see there's hundreds and hundreds in this room. I've always been very passionate about photo books. So I said to myself, I was just going to make one, a very simple book, just to see what happens. I put it out on the internet to sell. And that was because I wanted an outlet for my own work. And a lot of photographers will tell you that, you know, getting exhibitions is very difficult. You know, it's very hard to have full control over what you want to do when you want to exhibit your work and stuff. And so I always liked the book because it's a way that you can control how your work is received. And also with the advent of self-publishing, it's a lot easier to get your work out there. So I just saw it as something to do for fun to start with. And when I put the book out and people started buying it and people were showing interest, I thought, well, let's move forward. And because place has always been my interest, once Out of Place was a bit more established, I worked with friends of mine that were photographers, people I already knew were making interesting work, and I would work with them to get some of their work made into books. And then people would get in contact from different places. We've had people from like all over the world get in contact to make books. And basically I just work very closely with them. We have email conversations, Zoom calls, and I try and basically I'm looking for people that make work in the way I see things, in a way. I have that similar thing where they want to understand the place for some reason. Maybe they're second generation from a different place. Maybe they're from a place that's a bit misunderstood. Like a lot of the work is in the Midlands, which there isn't much work about in art and photography. We're quite a large area of the country that we don't see a lot of interest in. So I'm quite passionate about making sure this area has work coming out of it in the photographic world and stuff. So it's kind of a long answer, but the main interest is work that speaks to me, you know, that is interested in place and is nuanced and thoughtful.
It's very interesting. Chris, you also deliver talks and you do workshops at various educational and community institutions. What key messages or skills do you hope to give to the students or to the community?
Yeah, so this is something I think about a lot because I've been involved in education for a long time now. And it kind of links in with Out of Place books as well, because I think there's something really important about getting to know the place you're from and the place you live in. And I think there's something really important about spending time in the real world and learning about it. And I think something that's unique about photography as an art is that you have to engage the thing you want to photograph. You know, with other art forms, you can still do this, but you don't have to. And I like how photography forces us to go and visit the thing we want to photograph. So if I want to photograph you, I need to come and see you. Or if I want to go and photograph the Eiffel Tower, I need to go there and engage with it. And I like how photography has this opportunity to get us out into the world. And I think for students, it's a nice way of them thinking about where they're from. And also maybe if they're from a place that people don't see as a good place, you know, them showing it from their perspective might change people's minds. And also just think photography is just an excuse to explore anywhere and be interested in things and get to know people and places. And I think that's where it overlaps with education. But I'm also, I don't want to say obsessed, but I'm very interested in the photo book as an art form. So most of my teaching is also about how photography can be kind of presented in book form as like an art object. So that's kind of where the teaching crosses over as well, where I kind of think it's a really beautiful way of kind of sharing photography.
Now, I'm sure through your career you have achieved many things, but I would like to focus on the latest one, if it is the latest one. Some of your pieces from the series The Planting of a Fig Tree have been selected for the exhibition. There is an island currently at the Cyprus High Commission. Can you tell us about the inspiration behind this series? Because it's so interesting. There is, fig tree is very symbolic to many cultures. So I would like to know more about it, please.
Fantastic. Yeah, so it all began really during the lockdown. And I'm always been quite a busy person with photography and things, and it's very rare that I've had time to sit down and like write a proposal for a commission. And during the lockdown, I wrote. There was a Birmingham-based photography hub called Grain, who were asking for project submissions. So I wrote this kind of submission about the Cypriot community in Birmingham. And the idea behind it all was I was thinking a lot about distance, of course, because of social distancing. And I was thinking a lot about how we as a diaspora are so used to thinking about distance because we kind of are always far away from Cyprus. And we're always travelling back and forwards, and we have this sense that it's always there. And then I wonder, how would we now deal with these new kind of, these problems where we can't be together because we're so used to being together. You know, like our culture is kind of created in our togetherness in a way. You know, like we're all together always, you know, whether it's cultural events, religious events, you know, family events, eating together, you know, big tables of food and sharing stories. It's so much of it is about that. So it made me want to explore the Cypriot kind of diaspora during this time. So I was, as best as I could, I was visiting people, and it very quickly like dawned on me that everybody had a fig tree in the garden. And bear in mind, because it was lockdown, often I could only see people in the garden, so I'd go outside to photograph them. And I thought, everyone has a fig tree. Most people have got an olive tree. And I was thinking so much about the word diaspora and how it's like etymological root. The Greek words that make up diaspora are this idea of spreading seeds. You know, that's what were these seeds that have been spread from Cyprus or the whatever country it is. And I thought, how interesting is it that we plant all these seeds of our culture in everyday life? Like, you know, we have the community centre, we have the church, we have these like different traditional things that we still do, and we tell stories and plant the seeds in England of our history. But I was fascinated by the fact that all Cypriots also physically plant seeds. So many people, and I've spoke to people ever since about this. Often people bring plants from Cyprus, or they plant a fig tree in the garden because it reminds them of home, or an olive tree, and we not only do it metaphorically, we do it physically. And I thought that's such an interesting thing. So because the fig tree was one that kept coming up, it became like a motif in the series. Because although there are only 2 photographs in the exhibition at the embassy, the wider series is much longer and has a number of kind of motifs that pass through, and the fig tree is one of them. So yeah, it was very much about that, trying to look for these cultural markers and these little seeds of our culture throughout the series, you know. And yeah, the plants were definitely one of them.
I mean, I love figs, to be honest.
Yeah.
I really love them. And the dark ones and the white ones, they're so delicious, you know. And I love, I mean, I don't know, it's symbolic, you know, there's a symbolic meaning in many cultures. Like in some cultures, it symbolizes like, I think the roots, the past, the branches present, and there are from what, yes, the trunk is the present and the branches the future, you know, and also is in the Old Testament, you know. So, I mean, it's a good topic that you chose, I mean, for different reasons, but it's really, really interesting. Now, we know all this, you know, the explanation, the inspiration, and we really appreciate these, you know, photographs, you know, from your collection. How do you hope viewers will engage with and interpret the photographs in the exhibition? Is it any description there? Because it's really nice to know the meaning.
Yeah, so there's not so much in the exhibition, and part of that is because it's part of a wider series. But the ones that are in the exhibition show one of the images of a fig tree outside of a greenhouse, but shot from inside. So the fig tree is kind of separated from you through this glass. So, you know, it's kind of like it's there, but there's something between us and the figs, which kind of for me was multiple metaphors. It was like at the time there was the whole sense of the lockdown and COVID and us being separated. But there's also the other meaning of us sometimes, if you're part from the diaspora like me, like Cyprus and your Cypriot culture and stuff is sometimes feels a bit too far away and a bit out of grasp, and like you know what it is but you can't quite reach it. And then the other image is kind of related to how so many like Greek-speaking Cypriots kind of connect themselves with like Greek traditions and history, because our kind of history is a little bit more complicated, and it's only now that a lot of younger Cypriots are kind of calling themselves more Cypriot as opposed to kind of Greek more often and stuff like that. And it's a little bit about that kind of complex relationship we have with like a Greek tradition. So it's like a kind of classical Greek sculpture head laying on the side, almost like it almost looks like it's been, to me, it always feels like it's like an archaeological discovery, because it's laying down and in the light, you know, there's light and kind of shadow around it. It's not hung up on the wall. So that's kind of the connection there, really. It's like about our distance from these kind of cultural markers, if you know what I mean. Yeah. But I hope that, aside from the exhibition, one of the reasons why I wanted to do the book was that where I am here in Birmingham, and a lot of my kind of family in the community don't engage much with art. It's not really something that they engage with too often. So making the book meant I could give it to people, and then they could look at it in their own time, and there's no pressure to be, you know, in a certain place at a certain time. And I felt there was something more kind of slower and comfortable about having the opportunity to look on your own time. But it means so much to me to see like photographs that I made here in Birmingham about our community in the embassy, you know, in London, you know, in a place that's so significant. You know, that is kind of just as important as anything else really as well.
Exactly. And if I'm not mistaken, the exhibition will be until end of August. Is that correct?
Yes.
And there is a curator at certain times of the days or weeks that people can find on the website, or you can tell us as well if you know.
Yeah, I know there's already been a curated tour. So a lot of us artists were there a couple of weeks ago, and there was a curated tour where some of us spoke as well during. But I believe there may be some more, but I can't remember the schedule myself.
Yeah, but that's fine. They can find it on Cyprus High Commission. Yes, website and also on social media. But where we can see your work, I mean, I would like you to tell us your website or where we can find you on social media, that our viewers can see more of your work.
Well, you can visit my website, which is chris-neophytou.com. Out of Place Books also has a lot of my books. A lot of the books I've made, including books about Cyprus, are available at the Photographers Gallery if you want to go and see them there. There's one I made quite recently called Gamares, which is in the Photographers Gallery bookshop. If you're in Manchester, you can visit Village Books, and the same in Leeds.
Excellent.
Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery have bought most of the photographs from the Fig Tree book, but they're not on display at the moment because the gallery's partially closed. But hopefully they'll bring them out again. So yeah.
Excellent. Now, before I let you go, what upcoming projects or goals do you have for Out of Place books?
Well, I'm making a lot of books at the moment for other people's work. I've just completed a couple at the moment. We're working on a great book with a really amazing young photographer from Beirut at the moment about the city and the sea. Which is going to be really great. And working with a great photographer from the Midlands as well at the moment, who has been photographing on large format, traditional like English kind of rituals and things for the last 30 odd years, which would be great. But for my own work, I've got a few projects upcoming, but they're not really ready to kind of present yet. They're kind of very early stages. So yeah.
Thank you, Chris. It was really nice to have you. We wish you all the best. And I urge people to go and see the exhibition and see your work as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Αγαπητοί φίλοι και φίλες, εμείς θα τα πούμε και πάλι πολύ σύντομα με ένα καινούριο θέμα και ένα καινούριο φιλοξενούμενο. Καλό σας βράδυ.